Sounds good.
All right, the recording is started, so take it away, sir.
Thanks, Len. Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's No Fail Friday webcast on the latest solution in our mainframe security portfolio, CA Compliance Event Manager, which we just announced a few weeks ago at CA World. My name is Matt Dubey, Product Marketing Manager for the mainframe security portfolio here at CA. And today, Chip Mason, the Product Manager for CA Compliance Event Manager, will be talking through what is new with the solution and also its integrations with our other product, CA Data Content Discovery. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Chip.
Great, thanks, Matt, and good morning, everyone. My name is Chip Mason. As Matt mentioned, I'm the Product Manager for a new solution called Compliance Event Manager, which is now version 5. Before I kick this off and get started, I'm going to apologize in advance. I woke up with a bit of a cough, so I'm going to make every attempt to shield you from that and hit my mute button as fast as I can. But again, my apologies. But let's get started. So Compliance Event Manager is a new name for a product that is in its 5th version. Some of you may have heard of a product called Chorus Security Discipline, or even an earlier version of this product family called Compliance Manager. So we've had 2 versions of Compliance Manager and 2 versions of Chorus Security Discipline. This is the 5th version in the family line, and we decided to change the name. And we changed the name primarily because we have removed some of the Chorus platform components and gone with a much lighter weight and easier to manage infrastructure. So in celebration of the fact that we've made this a much simpler solution, we've renamed it, and it's called Compliance Event Manager. So any of you customers out there who happen to have licenses or perhaps are using Compliance Manager or Chorus Security Discipline, this may be something of primary interest to you as we move along into continuing to update our solution. So let's get started. We're going to go through a real quick agenda here. We're going to talk a little bit about a Compliance Event Manager to give you some ideas of what its scope is. I'll then go into a bit about what's new in version 5. There are obviously a number of use cases that can be solved with the solution. I'll go into just a few of them to introduce what we can do with the solution. Then I'll introduce another part of our strategy in our platform with data content discovery and introduce what we call data-centric security to the CA Compliance Event Manager solution. We'll talk about what we do and the integrated value if you have and use both of these products. And then finally, I'll close it off with a little bit of roadmap and some things to look at that are coming down the pipe. So to kick that off, let's go through sort of and cover what is Compliance Event Manager and what we can do with it. So Compliance Event Manager really is our mainframe security vulnerability platform. It is a solution that we've created on the mainframe. It runs on the mainframe, and it runs within ZOS. And it ties into our ESMs, so top secret, ACF2, as well as RACF. It ties into control points within ZOS and also obviously has visibility into many of the files. And from that, it can monitor and create security alerts around certain security issues within the mainframe. Now, it monitors those details and it provides that with direct access to the ESMs. So what we summarize these solutions in 3 sort of marketing terms. One is called alert, the other is called inspect, and then the third one is protect. So a core part of what the solution does is generate alerts around critical security issues and vulnerabilities within the mainframe. Now, a lot of solutions out there will use what's called SMF, which is sort of the security log within the mainframe, to actually get any kind of alerts or anything from that. Now, any tool that has a security issue or is related to security typically will write an entry into SMF, just like any other product will typically write 2 log files with any platform. And most security products out there will just look at SMF and pull anything off of that. However, there are a lot of activities on the mainframe that do not report into SMF, or there are exits that escape from that and a few other things. And we feel that those are important security things to be aware of and be alerted to that could be, either bad behavior or just incorrect behavior, particularly around someone who has privileged access to the mainframe. So we, in fact, monitor security details direct from the ESM and the control points within ZOS. We don't actually look at SMF. We're actually a superset of SMF, and we grab these information prior to being recorded in SMF. We can also, and because of this, monitor critical security system changes to PDS files. And so this is really helpful because you can actually, if you're a privileged user, you can actually make changes in a PDS file that change some of the configuration settings, allowing you to take some action. And then you can change those back before the machine gets IPL'd, and no one's the wiser that you've done that. And this is often something used by system programmers as a shortcut to make their life easier or to get something done that they may not have exact permissions for. But it can be a vulnerability and a risk in a mainframe environment. So it's something that we don't encourage, and we like to alert our customers too. So in fact, if a PDS file changes that is being monitored by our solution, we can alert you to the fact that what the change has occurred, when it occurred, and who did it. So this is a critical area that we can do for managing and maintaining vulnerability issues on the mainframe. We also can look at detection of security system changes and other policy violations, and I'll show you that in our use case. But there's a long list of other files and configuration items that we can monitor with the solution. Of course, like any security and vulnerability management solution, it's really designed and built for high-volume security events. So we actually have a technology within our solution that we happen to call a router, and it's not unlike a router in a network sense. But rather than causing the ESM to bog down based on the consumption of events from CEM, we actually have a router that will take and store and forward those events to our CEM system as we're processing them, so that we free the ESM directly and immediately from having to store anything with these events. So we have a way of making this highly scalable. We have customers out there on previous versions that literally scale in the billions of events, and so it's been proven. Let's go into the next one. So inspect. Now, one of the other things that you do besides alerting is that once you have an alert, it's real important that you inspect what's going on with your alerts and your security issues. So this allows you to go and look and see, perhaps when you get an alert, to understand the timeline. When did this alert occur? Who did it? What the user is? What the issues are? What led up to it? And this is very important. The downside of a lot of things with SMF is that you have an enormous log, and identifying and finding those things can be a challenge. Instead, what we have in CEM is an ability for you to create policy-based filtering, and through that, real-time recording of these critical security events. So rather than you digging through SMF, CEM allows you to create a policy, particularly around a user, an event type, or other kind of activity that you wish to monitor, and we'll create a database of those events and alert you in real time. And you can go then and inspect those very quickly to see, okay, you just got a real-time alert, tell me more about it. We provide reporting around that, again, using the same capabilities with our policy-based filtering to allow you to report on those events and, again, help you do an inspection of what's actually going on in your environment. You can also replay, if you will, these security events, and we can support the security and forensic analysis in these security situations where it may help you with this raw data. So the secondary ability within CEM is that we can record a sort of a raw stream of all the security events that you might have. And this can be, this is actually a separate function and independent of the policy-based filtering. But once you do an inspection and you wish to, and you've done this based on your filtering, you can then go look into the actual raw security events, and you can actually do what we call a data mart or a filter around that to inspect a certain time period, a certain class of event, and really do a forensic analysis to understand what actually went on. So we give you a filter to help you understand in real time what's going on, and then we give you an ability to do a later forensic analysis where you can see a raw stream of all those data and actually do a filtering based on that as well. So you can search, filter, analyze all the recorded historical data. That capability also has the ability to store that information on tape, so you can archive it if you happen to have a very large database of security events. So with the solution, we can actually give you the capability of doing real-time analysis to inspect what's going on when you get the alert, as well as a more detailed forensic analysis to look at history and activity over time to help you do some more analysis and perhaps even build a better case of filters and alerts as you move forward. And then finally, we offer the ability to protect. Now, one of the things that's really interesting with CEM is that it's really designed for security. We built this by integrating it directly with the ESMs because we want to make it immune from some of the activities that can happen when a system programmer is doing things they shouldn't do, or perhaps they are actually an insider threat. Now, we know from Gartner that insider threats on many of our platforms, including Mainframe, is a growing problem. We're seeing instances where users are actually taking important information and sensitive data from a corporate environment and selling that on the black market through a lot of these onion-based black and gray market areas on the internet. In fact, the problem has become so acute that Gartner now tracks these as a population that they call second streamers. And the second streamer means that it's a person employed that is looking for a second stream of income. And that's become a very prevalent problem. Now, not to say that any of our listeners here today have this problem, but it's certainly something that you want to be aware of and alerted to. And one of the things that CEM does to help you here is that because we're tied in directly to ESM, we're immune from exits that are placed in SMF and other things within configuration files. So things that can be changed and not detected with SMF, we can actually detect, and we can alert you to that in near real time when someone makes a change to a critical configuration file, something they mean to hide, or perhaps it's just a shortcut and not really malicious. It's something that you need to be aware of. So again, we can actually do this and provide you alerts for changes to PDS files, SysParm Live, and a few others, and we'll get into that in just a moment. We also provide real-time monitoring of these critical ZEOS configuration files, and we can analyze users that are accessing critical, sensitive, and regulated data sets with our integration with a product called CA Data Content Discovery. And we'll talk about that in a quick moment. Okay, let's move on to what's new in version 5 of Compliance Event Manager. Now, well, I will point out that unlike some other solutions, this solution runs entirely on the mainframe. There's no need to move data around, and of course it does monitoring of these critical configuration files. That's something that is unique to our platform. In version 5, we've really focused on making the time to value much more improved. In other words, how quickly you can get from installing and configuring to actually using the solution. And we dramatically reduced that, made installation, deployment, and configuration much lighter in weight. Critical to this, of course, is that we have a new lightweight web-based platform. So our user experience has been dramatically simplified. We have a very simple user interface, a picture of which you can see here on the screen. And all our policy and administration UI is through this same basic interface. It uses a lightweight version of Tomcat, and it's web-based. So it makes it very simple to administer and use the solution. In the past, you know, we have suffered from some installation troubles in terms of how long it could take us to get this installed. We're delighted to let folks know that at least on the experience of a number of our validation customers that has been working with us for the last 6 months to a year, we've had experiences of approximately a day or less for a full installation and configuration and getting this problem up to speed. So it's been a really great improvement, and we've had a lot of compliments from our validation customers about how easy this is to get deployed and to use. We've also reduced the footprint. It's a much lighter weight alternative to the previous core security and compliance solution. Again, as I said, this uses a lightweight Tomcat and web-based interface here. We've also improved the performance of our real-time alerting and monitoring, which allows you to really identify these potential breaches or insider threats So we've really improved the performance there. We've added high availability support in terms of Splunk environments. And of course, as we'll mention here in a moment, we've done some integration with other parts of our portfolio. We've already had the integration with ESMs, obviously, but we've integrated with CA content discovery for what we're calling data-centric security. Pardon me, had to go on mute. One of the things that we do within the mainframe area of CA is that we've all moved to what we call agile development practices. Now, part of agile development allows us to quickly implement features and functions that we work directly with you, our customers, to identify. The thing about this is that we need a method by which we can quickly make those new features available on a regular basis to our customers. But we don't want to disrupt many of our customers' mainframe environments in the process. So we take a slightly different approach here in that we have what we call complete releases and incremental releases. And we allow the customer to choose sort of which sort of path they wish to be on. Now, in order to get to the agile solutions, we have to enter into what we call our incremental release program, and that is based on a previous complete release. Our CA Compliance Event Manager version 5 is our complete release. It is the solution by which we've made available to the market, and it is a fully supported solution. We take that solution within, a few weeks, I guess, of announcing it and releasing it, and we actually create what we call an incremental release based on that. Now, any new features that we decide to support will be plugged into what we call the incremental release program. Only the complete release will get just PTF and fixes. It will not get new features. So if you don't want to have new features and you want to maintain and just have fixes, you can go with our version 5 program that I announced today. We also now have what we call Compliance Event Manager version 6 incremental release. And so not to confuse you, but version 6 essentially is version 5 where we're going to start adding new features as we go through this. Now, our first drop of features will occur about the end of December, so it's fairly quickly, and you'll see them, pretty much every quarter or so after that. There'll be additional APARs and PTFs that allow you to add features to the version 5 code. We'll call that version 6 incremental release. Now, one of the first features that we plan to make available in our version 6 incremental release is our full integration with Splunk. One of our goals with the solution is to allow you to send security events from the mainframe to a SIEM platform like Splunk or ArcSight or Logarithms or others. Our first available one, and we were working with the Splunk company on this, is our integration with Splunk. Now, essentially what we're doing is we've created a method by which you can forward and filter events from CEM and forward them to a Splunk environment. Typically, that environment is obviously running in a distributed environment and may be owned by the security department across all the IT process. So this allows you to send those events and allows you to filter events to the Splunk app. Now, a critical aspect, we think, of doing this is filtering those events. The mainframe can create an enormous amount of events in the security space, and forwarding all those events to a platform like Splunk or ArcSight, while not a performance issue, can become a cost issue, and that is primarily because most of these SIEM platforms price by the amount of data that's stored within the databases of these tools. They often charge by gigabyte, terabyte, or petabyte. So dumping an enormous amount of security information from the mainframe into these solutions can impact your budget. So we've built into our solution the ability, using the CEM policies, the ability to filter the kind of events that you send into Splunk. Because we also have the ability to record a raw set of events, you can also then filter and push those events later into Splunk if you need them. But nevertheless, you're filtering those events and helping, with constrained budgets. We also are creating a Splunk app. So Splunk has a, if you will, sort of a web store called Splunk Base that you can go and download Splunk plugins. And we're creating one. It's called the CEM Splunk app. It'll be available eventually in Splunk base. But as a CEM customer, you will get free access to this. And it basically gives you a number of pre-configured dashboards and a few other things that are tied into how CEM labels and names things. And you can see an example of that here in this screenshot. And this is one of our views of our dashboard that we're going to provide within this. In this case, it's a simple view of sign-on and sign-off and other violation events within the ESM. But there'll be a large number of these that allow you to create all kinds of interesting and custom dashboards using CEM data within Splunk. So this will be an early drop in the next month or so for our CEM 6 IR incremental release, again, based on what I mentioned about CEM version 5. Let's move on to a couple of use cases. I probably mentioned these briefly earlier, but let's talk a little bit more about them. There's a number of use cases that we could go. I want to talk about two here. One is real-time alerting, and the other is operating system security monitoring. In the first one, real-time alerting is really important because oftentimes we run into situations where customers will actually sort of go through and look at SMF and load a bunch of data into another tool to do some filtering and a few other things to really understand what happened. Instead, we'd like to take a little bit different approach, which is build those policies and those searches, if you will, before you actually generate the data. And that way you can have a filtered list that you can look at through CEM, but you can also base real-time alerts based on that. So rather than looking at them after the fact in SMF, we can give you an alert that's in near real time about what's going on. So again, we employ these policy-based alerts, and you build your policies with the tools, and then you decide how you want to be alerted on those. We have alert types that include email, a WTO, as well as sysprint, and we'll also be doing alerts that allow you to send them to Splunk as well. That'll be coming soon. So the solution really collects these events both for auditing purposes as well as alerting, and it creates targeted reports for auditors. So you can actually have these build, based on these policies, build all kinds of reports and real-time alerting. Now, the nice benefit of this is it really does sort of quiet the noise that you get in terms of security alerts and events. You really can choose what you think is most important and requires immediate alerting. So rather than getting a sign-on event or several thousand every morning, you can actually filter those out and not get all the sign-on events and get just the violations. So it's a very helpful feature. Now, the next one is really operating system integrity monitoring, which I mentioned before. We obviously can monitor these critical PDS files for showing changes in real time. This monitoring also extends to a number of other really important files from a configuration standpoint. The Program Properties Table, or PPT, Authorized Program Facility, APF, our ZOS parameters, so our sysparmlib and other parmlibs that are really critical here, SMF exits that are on there, and a few other I/O front ends as well. And you can see in the screenshot here that, in fact, configuring these is fairly straightforward. Checking the boxes and give a couple of the parameters within this makes it really quite simple to create a monitor and alerts and allow you to understand when a privileged user has made changes to these files that may be something suspicious. We know for a fact that monitoring these kind of things is really a manual process. We found that through some work with our customers that it can require nearly a full FTE per LPAR, which is extraordinary, right? One of our customers found over 49,000 critical files that fell into this category within a single LPAR. And I'm sure you probably recognize that there's a lot of these kinds of files and whatnot. Some of them are critical, some of them not so much, but nevertheless, being able to monitor and alert when there are changes or additions made to these files, if you can automate that process and filter those in terms of alerts, you can make a really significant impact to headcount and productivity within your security mainframe area. So this is a critical aspect and one of the things that we really focus on within CEM. Now, another area that we're focusing on is that CEM and our ESMs like ACF2 and Top Secret obviously are really managing user activity. That is the core of the security foundation within the mainframe is providing user IDs and granularity of access permissions based on these user IDs. So it's a critical aspect of how CEM really manages and monitors the user and the user activity. However, an important thing is coming up as we increase regulation and other things within the security environment, and that is that it's become important to understand that data and the kind of data that are stored and used on the mainframe is become a critical, in fact, regulatory aspect in many respects. Previously, we didn't worry about such things as name and address and phone number, and sometimes even things like social security number. It wasn't all that critical. But now we have regulations that really restrict even publishing an email of a customer online or any place. And we have regulations like HIPAA. We have best practices like PCI DSS. Our friends in Europe and those that are covered by Privacy Shield know about GDPR, which is a really critical regulation that can have some enormous financial impacts. So understanding not only what your users have access to, but what kind of data they have access to is critical to our thinking, and part of what we're calling data-centric security, in addition to user-centric security we already support. So our tool of choice here is something called data content discovery, and it is a tool that does discovery and classification of data on the mainframe. It runs on the mainframe, so you don't have to move the data around, and it scans a very large class of data, including all your databases and many of your flat files as well. It's very quick to install, only takes a few hours, and has about 130 some odd out-of-box classifiers to help you find things like credit card numbers, mag stripe data, social security numbers, driver license numbers, all those kind of things that you might look for within the solution. It's a very simple user interface. Again, it's a web-based interface, much like Compliance Event Manager, and in fact, you'll note that it shares very much the same look and feel as CEM. As I said, there's lots of classifiers around personally identifiable information, PCI DSS information, and we've also added personal health information for those of you that might be on regulations such as HIPAA. We have a lot of classifiers out of the box for both U.S. and Europe and Asian Pacific identifiers. The data types. Now, many solutions out there will support typically just DB2, which of course is important, but we go beyond DB2 and do physical sequential, PDS, PDSE, DB2, USS, VSAM, and we've added Datacom and soon IMS. We also can scan not only data at rest, which is sort of the bulk of what must be scanned, we can also do data in motion as we're providing FTP, allow you to scan the data sets that are being transferred within FTP to give you some awareness of when sensitive data is being moved around or migrated off the mainframe. And of course, this is fully integrated with CA Compliance Event Manager, so you can actually marry what is sensitive data with who has access to that. So let's look at a use case where this might be helpful. In fact, the integration that we have between these products gives us three really critical and important use cases. The first one here under number one really helps customers get alerted to access and changes to sensitive data. So the first one is that DCD can actually query CEM to find out who has access to a particular database, so we can look and see of the user IDs, which ones have access to this data, and that's an important metric. But we also go a little bit further and allow you to understand who has actually accessed this data in the past. So you may come up with a list of, say, I don't know, 50 users who have permissions within the ESM to access a particular sensitive, newly discovered sensitive data set. But we can query further and tell you that of those 50, 5 have accessed that data, and maybe some have accessed that data many times over the last few weeks. So we can actually build an alert within CEM to say that if a particular user accesses the data more than, I don't know, a handful of times a week or a month, or perhaps if they exceed a limit and they may be accessed 100 times in the last week, that may be enough to trigger an alert to do further investigation to find out what is this user actually doing with this data? Why are they having to touch this data so much? Why are they downloading that data? And we can create a number of alerts around that to give you some increased awareness to maybe there's some bad behavior going on. Maybe this user is actually trying to get access to data, and perhaps they're a second streamer. We hope not, but at least we give you the ability to actually look at and invest into that issue. Now, a number of these regulations out there require you to show not only show that you've protected these, but also you have a good record of who has accessed this data and in the past, and ensure that those people are the right people to have access. So this is a good way of giving you early warning when you maybe have some violations around things like PCI DSS or even HIPAA. Now, the second use case is that we can actually trigger a scan from CEM into DCD if a data set is changed. So CEM can actually monitor these files in much the same way that we monitor the PDS files and changes. And if there's been a change in that file, maybe it's a significant change for amount of data, perhaps a column has been added by a development team into the application. If there's a big change, we can actually go in and instruct DCD to kick off a scan to see if this data contains now sensitive data. Of course, if it's already been scanned for sensitive data and found that to be sensitive, we probably don't want to trigger that, and that's something we can handle as well. And then finally, DCD can trigger CEM to create a policy to track changes in access to regulated data sets. So if you have a critical data regulated data set and you want to create an alert whenever there's been access to it, you can actually create that automatically within CEM. So here we have the ability to combine our information about what is sensitive data and combine that with our user activity monitoring and create a solution where you can actually understand who's accessing what and whether what they're accessing is critically important to the company to protect. So it's a really interesting set of integrations and solutions that we think really takes what we had in terms of user activity monitoring and brings it into the world of data-centric management and security management that we've offered today. So this is some interesting and critical integration. Now, to show you sort of a screen that comes from our DCD product, this is what it will look like when you actually go and define information about who has access. So we'll show you the user ID of those users that not only have permission to access, but those that have actually accessed this data set in the past. And this is a data set that we looked at to see if it had Social Security numbers in it. Of course, it does have Social Security numbers, so now we want to see who's actually accessed. And you can see that Albert Einstein, who is one of our critical system programmers, accessed this on May 27th of 2015, and he continued to access for a year, in fact, up to May 2016. And he's accessed that 12 times. And if you look further down the list, you'll see that some users have even done even more. And so you can create a filter, you can create a policy within CEM to alert you when Albert Einstein perhaps accesses a few more times. Maybe someone hasn't accessed in a really long time, and you can create a policy to let you alert you when some of these users that have access actually access it again. So it's a critical piece of reporting, and it's very important in terms of many regulatory regulations out there in terms of reporting. So our data-centric security really is a combination of both CEM version 5 and 6 and data content discovery. So CEM, or Compliance Event Manager, really helps you know and understand when a breach occurs. We can show notification of potential security breaches. Stakeholders, including those outside the mainframe, can receive immediate notification if there's a violation, maybe an access or a change to critical resources, including sensitive data resources. We provide a means for faster remediation because we have real-time alerting. And as we've shown, we can actually reduce the cost of compliance, both in terms of providing real-time alert and policy-based alerting, but also our simplified user interface that makes it really easy and quick to get it up and running with CEM. We can help you really demonstrate regulatory compliance, particularly around those that you have to prove access and access capability within sensitive data sets. I will mention again that CEM version 5 really is a replacement, if you will, for our previous version, which is called Chorus Security Discipline. For those that have experience with the Chorus platform, this no longer requires the Chorus platform. Interesting enough, it can actually plug in and work with it, but it doesn't require it anymore. My apologies again. It's also integrated with CA data content discovery for visibility and who can touch the data. And then CA data content discovery really is how we can eliminate and help reduce and mitigate risk around sensitive data sets. So it really can help reduce the risk of an unlawful data leak. While it may not be protecting in terms of vulnerabilities that sit outside the mainframe, it certainly gives you awareness of where you may have to step up the protection or make sure that you do a real analysis of what users have access to data. We have a number of customers who, upon finding they have sensitive data on their data set, evaluate the access permissions around that sensitive data and do a significant restriction around who has the ability of that. So typically users, a standard user on the mainframe may have a fairly broad access rights, but once they find sensitive data, social security numbers or credit card numbers within that data set, they then restrict that to a very narrow set of customers and users to help them protect against future data leaks. The notion here is that a user that really does need access that has it removed can go through the normal process of requesting and being approved for access if they need it. It helps enable customers to really identify this sensitive data, correlate that data with access rights, help remediate against risks such as data threat or insider theft. I mean, it really helps them discover any unknown sensitive and regulated data. One of the issues that's particular to the mainframe is that data is fairly static. Oftentimes, data sets are created as part of jobs or maybe an old application. Maybe a user created this data set and has since retired or no longer has access or use of the mainframe. A lot of this data is sort of either hidden, unknown, or it's just buried in a great mass of data that sits on the mainframe. We oftentimes don't delete that data because we're really not sure what it is, and we don't want to take a risk that we may impact the system if we delete that data. In this case, what we can do is actually use this kind of tool to look at many of these data sets and see whether they are sensitive. So even though we're not sure how they're used or what their impact is, we can at least be aware of them and protect them, move them perhaps to a different location, create different access rights to those data, and use that to help us not only manage how we protect that data, perhaps also how we create our retention policies around a data set that previously may have been around the mainframe for tens or more years. This helps helps you discover these data sets and really clean up, if you will, the mainframe and really make sure that you're aware of what risks might exist and help you to reduce those risks. So this is what we're calling data-centric security, and it's really our combination integration between our CA DCD and our new CEM solution. Now, I'll move to the closing of this particular presentation, and then we'll get into a Q&A section here. But I wanted to cover sort of the roadmap to give you an idea of the kind of things that we're planning on delivering over the next few what we call incremental releases. So version 5, of course, brought with it our simplified user experience, which really made a lightweight web UI. We made it much, much easier to install, again, with a number of our customers experience install of far less than a day. And, of course, we reduced the footprint. And that is primarily from our no longer requiring the mainframe or the Chorus platform. And so we've also done a lot of information and a lot of things that improve performance around logging of security events. And you also notice from our previous versions, we've included the warehouse and data mart, which allows you to create custom reports and ad hoc reports using SQL query around many of this log data that comes from the solution. So again, a number of things that we've added here, but primarily the biggest solution set around CEM version 5 is the lightweight nature and the ease of use that we provided here. Now, as I mentioned, we're moving into the next phase where we get into what we call incremental release. And this is going into the version 6 of the product. And again, that will be announced, I'm anticipating probably the end of the month or so. So for those of you who have entitlement to CEM or own course, security discipline or compliance manager, you will see CEM version 6 IR, and it is fully supported. Again, our incremental releases are fully supported. They are just like the version 5, and that's it's going to be fully supported just like any other release. We just happen to release them more often. So again, what I said, we have DCD integration, the ability to integrate and send data to Splunk. We also will be doing what we call an update to what's called CIA, or Compliance Information Analysis and Event Reporting. Is a function that's shipped within our core security discipline as well as our ESMs. We'll be updating that and putting it on the new web UI, and you will see that in an upcoming incremental release. We'll also, we already provide migration for Compliance Manager version 2, and core security will be beefing that up and adding a lot more to that. And then some of the things we're looking at doing going forward, we want to look at really exporting our security information to other analytic platforms, be that UEBA platforms, big data platforms, or other kind of things. This includes the SIM platforms, which we already mentioned with Splunk, so we'll be moving into other SIM tools, but there's a large number of other platforms that we want to integrate with as well. We also want to add comprehensive information to our events and allow you to add labels, add explanation, contacts, a few other things. And our thought here is that the mainframe, we look at the mainframe as we call mission essential. From that perspective, mainframe is effectively just another server platform that is running our business. And it may have been around for a while, but it's still mission critical. But we're running into a solution where an issue where we either have a skills gap, or we have a number of users that may not have as a deep familiarity with mainframe, but they may be security experts. In this case, we want to provide information about what a particular violation means, and rather than giving, you know, an 8-letter acronym, which is often the case in the mainframe, we'll provide information within that event to explain to someone who may not be familiar with mainframe what this event means and what the violation, impact of that violation is. And you could add additional things such as the phone number or the solution for how to fix it. And so if you get an event that is seen within, say, Splunk from a distributed person who may not have mainframe, they can fully understand what this security impact is, and in fact they need to go do something about fixing it. So that's something that we're looking at. We're also looking at providing an operational dashboard so you can see sort of what alerts have happened in near real time. Advanced reporting. We're also looking at advanced configuration compliance using such things as DISA STIGs and a few others, and then also really doing some more integration with our platform and others. So that's really what's looking at in the roadmap for Compliance Event Manager. And so I'm going to move into now the section where we can do Q&A. And I see that there's a couple of Q&A things here. And Lynn, I don't know if we have the line open, but I'm going to go ahead and answer these here real quick. I have a thing from Mel here that says, is Splunk a separate product or just a term used in the presentation? So yes, Splunk is a separate product. It is actually done, it's a product that is done by Splunk. You can go to splunk.com. It is originally started out as a log file solution that allowed you to gather log files from all your platforms and do sorting and, in fact, a lot of big data type capabilities. Splunk has moved into the security information and event management area, or SIM. So Splunk is one of the leading SIM tools. Other tools you may have heard of in this category include ArcSight, QRadar, Logarithms. We queried a number of our customers as to which SIM tool that they most wanted to use, and Splunk came up the most. So that's the first one we supported. So look for other ones, QRadar and others coming soon, but for now we've done Splunk. So that's the first one about Splunk. The next one question I have here is, does the product have a mainframe plus distributed components in a single license? If so, does the distributed piece live in a server on a client machine? For both CEM and for DCD, these both are mainframe only. There are no distributed components within the solution, so they don't require you to run any kind of server or any kind of componentry in Windows or Linux or anything else. So they do not have, we do not actually have versions of these that run in a distributed environment. These are mainframe only solutions. So the license does not include a distributed solution because, well, we don't have one. So there's the answer to that question. So So that's the first two questions. Lynn or Matt, are we going to open the line up? And if we are, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chip. Just so everyone knows, most of you are listening through the WebEx broadcast, I believe. If you are on the phone line, just hit #6 and you'll unmute yourself. Otherwise, please feel free to use the Q&A section in the WebEx itself. If you don't see that box in the lower right of your screen, click the question mark icon in the upper right of your screen and it'll open up for you. At this point, I don't see any other questions, but we'll give everyone a minute or two to do their typing if they're not on the line.
Feel free to ask any question you might have.
And if you don't have any questions right now, what I would recommend is either later today or first thing Monday morning, I'll be posting the video replay of this session on the community, so you can please feel free to ask your questions there. And if Chip doesn't see them immediately, I'll make sure he sees them at some point.
Thanks. Well, I don't hear anyone on the phone dialing in. I know it could be difficult to do that through the system, but feel free to reach out. I'll put my information here. My email is chip.mason@ca.com, so if you have any follow-up questions or details or anything else, feel free to send me an email. Oh, I see one here, Lynn, from Michael Conway. Yep. Are there any plans or considerations for intercepting or controlling updates to critical system components? Michael, obviously we're doing that with respect to the configuration files. Again, I do PDS files and sysplum libraries and those sort of things. So I'm not sure what you mean by updates, but if you mean something beyond those configuration files, it's always a possibility. We really, as an agile sort of vendor now, you know, we really look for guidance from our customers like you to really tell us what's important and what things you're looking for. So if the existing solution with respect to our configuration file monitoring isn't sufficient, boy, I'd love to get more detail from you on that. So feel free to reach out and send me an email with some more specifics about what you're looking for. And I can let you know if it's something within the scope of the product or, you know, put it in our list of things that we're interested in pursuing. So thanks for the question. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer it all the way. Any other questions out there?
I don't see anything else, Chip, so I guess maybe we can wrap up. If any questions come in later today that you don't see, I'll make sure that I get them in front of you. I thank you very much for your time. And thank you, everyone, for your time today, and we'll see you out in the community. Thanks very much.
Thank you.